So Bradley Beal is signing with the LA Clippers after finally securing a buyout with the Phoenix Suns. Felt like that negotiation stage went on forever, but there was smoke always there, and it's finally happened. Beal ultimately leaves $14 million on the table to sign with the Clippers. Now, his deal with the Clippers is 2 years, $11 million, with a player option in year 2, and we'll get to that player option a little bit later. But as soon as the announcement broke from Shams, there was no buyout market. There was no negotiations with other team, even though he did say Beal, in the days leading up to the buyout was speaking with other potential suitors. But there was no period here where Beal was basically on the market and teams had a bidding war, an all-out bidding war to secure his services. It was basically announced that the buyout was secure, and straight away he's signing with the Clippers. Now, Shams said that, there was potentially 9 teams that wanted Beal's signature, including the Warriors, Lakers, Minnesota, and a bunch of other teams as well. Obviously, this deal didn't actually come out of the blue with Beal signing with the Clippers. There was a bit of a precursor, obviously, with Norman Powell being offloaded to the Miami Heat in that 3-team deal. And there was a bit of space. There was speculation that Beal would ultimately end up with the Clippers to replace Norman Powell when the buyout was secure. Now, a really great move for Bradley Beal, considering what he's gone through in Phoenix. And it was reported that, incredibly, James Harden was actually the one that heavily recruited Beal, according to Shams, even reaching out to him personally and his agent. So that's noteworthy as well. Now, when we get into the fit of things, we're going to do that a little bit later. But first, I wanted to start with, obviously, the team now on paper looks incredible. A lot's always going to depend on Kawhi Leonard's health. We know that. But if you put them on paper, if you look at their depth chart, very formidable. And obviously not giving Paul George that supermax money has allowed them financial flexibility now that we're seeing to build a pretty formidable roster in the West. And we can talk about a little bit later where they sort of sit in the tiers as well. But now, obviously, a lot's going to depend on Kawhi Leonard's health like it always does. And look, Bradley Beal's not the healthiest guy either. So we're talking about, and recently James Harden as well with the hamstrings and things of that nature. He hasn't been the healthiest guy as well. So the only thing stopping this team potentially could be doubtful, probable, and out. The medical staff will be working overtime to keep all these guys on the court at the same time, and it's going to be tricky, which is why the Clippers' depth actually now is so important. We want to talk about tiers just straight off the bat. Like I said, on paper, I think the Clippers are firmly in the next tier of the top tiers in the Western Conference, if that makes sense. So I think the top tiers include OKC, Houston, and Denver. I think everyone else comes after that. I think the Clippers are in that group, that next group, which is just a tier below those real contenders, in a group with Minnesota, potentially the Lakers if they make one more move. Those teams that are one step away, it looks like on paper, but no one would be surprised if they made a Western Conference Finals, for example. What's most interesting and most intriguing to me personally is that the Clippers, even though they've signing Beal and Beal's a better player than Norman Powell, really, it didn't change the tier they're in because Norman Powell had a phenomenal season last year. If anyone watched the Clippers, he was winning games single-handedly, especially the first half of the season when Kawhi wasn't there. He was just sensational and, in my opinion, an all-star snub. Let's go through the numbers. 22 points a game, 80% from the free throw line, 42% from 3, and overall 53% shooting from the field. A phenomenal season from Powell, and I thought he should have been an all-star. Obviously, Beal's a better player, but production replication is a real thing here. And Beal's obviously 17 points a game last year. The splits were actually really good. He's going to get more of an opportunity now here as well than he did in Phoenix. Obviously, with Kawhi probably being nursed through the regular season again, we probably still don't know if Kawhi can go a full 82-game regular season. So Beal's going to be the second option on most nights after James Harden, right? Harden's going to have the ball in his hands. Bradley Beal's the perfect fit there to space the floor, as he is with most contenders, and he's going to be the second option. He'll probably be around the 20-point per game scoring mark as well. But it is noteworthy that if he doesn't bring the production Powell did last year, this signing might just be a wash. Obviously, financially, they're a little bit more flexible now as well. They can still bring in the likes of Chris Paul on a minimum, but in terms of where they sit, if he doesn't bring the same production as Powell did, signing him could be a wash in terms of production with Powell. I said I also want to touch on the deal itself. 2 years, $11 million with a player option in year 2. Now, given the situation of the Clippers, he's likely out playing that option, which means this time next summer, there's going to be another decision to make depending on how healthy he was this season, what his production was like, and how far the Clippers go as well. In terms of the fit, like I said before, Bradley Beal has a modern day NBA skill set, which could basically be a contributor and be a helper to any contender out there looking for a floor spacer, a creator, high-level shot maker, a guy that can beat you off the dribble, decent in the mid-range, good from three-point range, a guy that can create his own shot, previously a 30-point scorer in Washington. I don't think he's the same player that he was back then, a little bit more banged up as well, but you know where we're going with this. They have a projected starting 5, like I said, on paper, pretty formidable. James Harden at the 1, Beal at the 2, Kawhi at the 3. Some people have Derrick Jones Jr. at the 4, but I prefer John Collins. And then Zoo at the 5. Again, pretty formidable starting 5, and in the West, that's a bloodbath. You have to stack as much talent as you can, and Beal next to Harden and Kawhi, I really like the fit. One of the last things I want to say about this as well is that I did mention that I don't think he's the same Wizards Beal as we've seen previously, a guy that could just get buckets at will for a losing team, but his stock has probably never been lower. You know, Beal was relegated to the bench last year. It was a weird situation. You know, like I said, he's been on losing teams. I mean, Phoenix was a losing team last year. Didn't make the playoffs. Haven't really seen him in meaningful games for a long time. But we can't forget, this is a really talented guy. Again, still 17 points a game last year on great shooting splits. We can't understate how good of a player he is still for the price they're paying. Obviously, he was still owed with this buyout, I've got it written down here, over $100 million over the next 2 years. So kudos to obviously Phoenix for getting out of that deal. But like I said, his stock was low because of his inflated deal. Not low because of the player he is. And if he's healthy and if the Clippers work it out, they could potentially be pushing a top 3, top 4 seed in the West because they're well coached and they're deep and their offseason has been phenomenal as well. And lastly, it's not really noteworthy in terms of Beal signing, but LeBron James now is the only player in the NBA to have a no trade clause. And that's pretty significant considering this guy's going to turn 41 this year, you know, come off 6th in MVP voting at the end of last season, all NBA second team. He's the only guy now officially in the league with a no trade clause that's baked into his contract. Very bizarre situation for a 40-plus-year-old. But yeah, Beal was the other guy. Obviously, we have some guys in there for service that they have, you know, default no trade clauses in their contract. But yeah, we now have an unofficial, I guess, big 3 with the Clippers. To be honest with you guys, I would have been a lot more excited if this was 6, 7, 8 years ago when all these guys were in their prime and in their healthy and at their healthiest. But again, still formidable, still need to stack talent in a bloodbath of a Western Conference. And if this team can put it together, if they can stay on the floor, if Harden, Kawhi, and Beal can get as many reps as they can on the floor in the regular season before they get to the postseason, this will be a team that nobody wants to see in the playoffs. As always, let me know what you guys think. I'll be here every day in the NBA offseason, breaking down what we're seeing and how rosters are coming together. I also might start my series of daily news, so let me know if you want that on any social media platform. You can contact me. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that like button. I'll see you in the next one.